All right. So first, I just wanted to welcome everybody on the call. So far, we've got, I think, 26 participants. The purpose of this call is to get all of the training managers. That's really, I know there's a lot more folks on here than just the trainers, but BB training managers, this is for you guys. Your district managers are on the call as well, and we have some other folks that are just kind of bird's eye view to see what it is that we're doing. But we really wanted to make sure that we communicate with each one of you as the COVID-19 is ever changing when it comes to policies, procedures, new memos that are coming out from the corporate office, things that have gone up on Apollo, different things that we're seeing out there in the facility. And we just want to make sure that, you know, first, you guys are our first line of defense down, you know, at the ground level. So I'm super grateful for all the work that you guys put in on a day-to-day basis. I know besides your facility, you're probably getting tons of phone calls from the field because most of the time these other managers, the account managers, when they have something trivial, they typically will give you guys a call before they call one of us. So we wanted to make sure that you guys were fully aware of, you know, all things COVID. I really did not want this to be a download session where I'm going to talk my face off for an hour, you know, and then everybody just jumps on the call and hopefully you absorbed it. I actually want it to be a little bit more interactive. That's why I set it up on Zoom, because I seem to get better results than some of the other programs that we use. So I am going to be doing some screen sharing to kind of show you all the stuff that's on the call there. We do have two other PDMs on the call. I got Karen West. She's waving.
Hello.
There you go. And then I got Kyle Easley, who's my counterpart in the B division on dining.
Hey guys, good afternoon.
All right. So, so the goal is to go through everything that is on Apollo. To kind of go through. When we first started, the binder was a 60-page document, and now as things have changed and more policies are coming out and all things that we're dealing with, it is now morphed into a 180-page document, which can be overwhelming when it's online. Not a lot of people, they'll start scrolling for something and then they end up giving up and they don't know, you know, where to turn when they have questions. And you know, right now, when you don't have Florida, we don't have as many active cases as they do up north, but you know, when you do have an active case, I really would hate for you guys to feel like you're scrambling and didn't get the education that you needed. And so, again, I really want this to be interactive. I do have everybody except for the PDMs on mute. You do have the availability to unmute yourself to ask questions and to dive in, so feel free to do that. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so hopefully everybody now can see my screen here. And so where I'm going to head to is Apollo. Okay, so the COVID-19 response tile was put on here for those of you that have not seen it yet or didn't know that it was there. Most of you should. So if we click on the COVID-19 response, you're going to see this basically the headings here where it goes through where we have the binder. Section 1 is the different communications that have gone back and forth from the corporate office to the field. Regulatory updates that have come into the binder are on these little tabs.
Mike, we can't hear you.
You can't hear me.
I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
You can hear.
Okay. So I'm gonna. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. Hopefully it's not just, it might be your one audio. So basically all these different headings, we're going to go through employment and personnel because some areas have put on the provisional hiring. So we want to touch base a little bit on that. What to do when you have a positive test in a facility and some of the procedures. Remote management for anybody that is having to work remotely and all that good jazz. So the first one would have been the binder. So I actually have that already pulled up here on this document. So I'm going to touch base on the table of contents and then we'll start diving into it here. All right, so the binder has 5 different sections. So the first section is all of the communication that has happened between the corporate office and the field. So we're going to go through each one of those. And what I want to do is after each section, open it up to questions because there's 5 different sections so that way we can kind of dissect it all. The first one is where I want to start, and that one's going to be all of the back and forth with the corporate office and cleaning procedures and different memos. The second section has to deal with the government agencies and different things that they've put out that's public record, and most of it is Googleable with the CDC and CMS and ACA's regulations and the EPA listing for what it is that we're using. Section 3 is all of the education and in-servicing that has been pushed out as a part of the coronavirus response, as far as our response, and for dining services and environmental services, as you can see there. Section 4 is where you're going to download the reports from either Apollo or LearnUpon to be able to stick in there, and any in-servicing that happened on site, any handwritten signatures that you have on any paper in services, all that will go in section 4. And then section 5 is a continuous tab where it's quality control inspections. So all of our checklists and everything is going to be put into that section on a daily basis. So our high touch point checklist and all of our quality assurance programs will go into there. So we'll dive into this first section. Oop, I've got 2 more that are trying to, let me click this here, chat. So for those of you that can see my screen, that's a little chat box. Somebody was asking a question here. Recording this correct? Yes, I am. Should every facility have this printed and the binder ready when asked? Yes, please print this binder, and have it at the facility. If we are full service dining and housekeeping, you really only need 1 binder. Just make sure that both managers have all their in-servicing in the 1 binder, and that we're sticking our checklists and our QA processes in the same binder. If it's just a dining services program that we do at that facility, then have them print out the binder. But yes, all this should be printed and ready to go at the facility. All right. I do have that little chat box up, so if you guys do have a question, you can send it to me there. Okay, so first one here was the memo from February 28th. This was kind of very early stages when COVID-19 first kind of came to the States and what we were dealing with. And so some of the highlights here is some of the products that we were already using. So the Virex 256 was typically most of our facilities were dealing with that. For my training managers, we got our 10-minute dwell time that we need to make sure that the chemical stays on the surfaces. Really focus on those high touch areas for that 10 minutes. Now, we should have on site something besides the 10-minute, the typical cleaning that we use. And so then we have the 1-minute contact times with the Oxiver, and some people have purchased the Advert. I have heard a lot of folks that have used the microkill, which is on this page from Medline. Now, as these facilities more and more start ramping up when it comes to cases, we start having things on back order. So we will go through the listing with Medline and with Diversity products of what is already there. That as you're going through catalogs or talking to your reps to see what's available. So those will be some of your go-tos, and then as different products are acceptable, then they'll end up on the list here. But this was early on, when it first kind of came to the States here. All right, so the next one was the coronavirus for long-term care facilities. This one was just a basic in-service as COVID-19 was starting to be prevalent, in the States. And so basic hand washing, everybody has talked about the hand washing procedures and making sure we're doing our 20 seconds. This title is, at the job, dealing with, many, the illnesses that you can spread back and forth, making sure that if you guys are feeling any kind of symptoms, performing your duties with proper precautions. If you get sick, what should you do? Obviously, most of my trainers, you guys are pretty smart when it comes to this. And so if you're sick or have anybody sick in your household, that you're reporting that right away, so that way we can make sure that we don't compromise the facility. Let's see here, our business, additional information. This is where I wanted to kind of head to with this. This is why this memo was important, was when all this happened and we got with the CDC's recommendations, it looked like every one of our practices when it came to what it is that we do on a regular for admission and discharge cleaning, 5 and 7 step procedures, chemical use, hand washing, hazard communication, all this type of stuff we were already had in place, and it met CDC and CMS regulations for long-term care facilities. So a lot of people have asked, what in-services should I put into the binder? I would grab everything that's on this particular in-service or this particular document and make sure that you have those in your binder. So admission, 5 and 7, chemical dilution, all that good jazz we've done from January to now on Apollo and on Learn-A-Pon. So if you need help, just get with your PDM, whether it's me or Kyle or Karen, and we will make sure that we print out what we need to, so for you, and get it in your binder. For the dining services employees, these
Hey,
are the
Mike, let me jump in there real quick.
please, please.
Just as another reminder for those specific in-services above, you guys, I know we get in arguments at times about paper copies of in-services. Now, the infection control in your ISO room, we have paper copies of those. However, the rest of above, we may not. So if state comes in, health department, whatever, and they're not wanting to just see a video and our completion copies, reports that we print aren't enough, the corporate office will and can send paper copies, but they will only send it to the surveyor themselves. It won't go to Mike, it won't go to you guys, it won't go to the DM, it won't go to the DOs. So what we would need is just their direct email address, and then the corporate office would be happy to send paper documentation directly to them. So just let us know if you need that as well.
The thing is, guys, we want to make sure we protect our intellectual property. There's been facilities that we've been canceled out of, and gone back in, and we see that hanging on the wall is some of our policies and procedures on how we're handling things. And so we want to make sure that we have a specific way of doing things, and that we protect those. There's a lot of hard work that goes in behind the scenes, to put these in services together. So thank you, Kyle.
The best practice is to download your training history, put it in the binder unless you're asked for a paper in service.
Perfect. All right. And so the next one was the coronavirus frequently asked questions for field managers. So for all my trainers on the call, this is super important. I'm sure you guys have read through it because we've gotten all of our Learn-A-Pon receipts back that you guys have done this in-service training. So we want to make sure that you go through it because a lot of times our administrators, as things are starting to get real down here and more cases are showing up, they start scrambling, and then they want to do something different. And like I would really want to reiterate that all of our practices and the things that we were already doing meet CMS and and ACA standards or CDC recommendations for how we're going to do these things. So I do want to reiterate that when it comes to administrators asking for different things. And so, again, it even says it in here, where if a client is asking for different chemicals or different procedures, and, does our stuff meet the standards? And these are, good responses. So if you have this printed, in your binder, when you guys have meetings about the coronavirus and one of these frequently asked questions come up, you can speak intelligently on it, and it even says if they look to change our routines or how we're performing things. I had to get with an administrator the other day because they wanted to do every 2-hour wipe downs, and it's not, they don't have a positive facility, case in the facility or anything like that. And, we want to follow our own practices. So right now our practices with the high touch points is 3 times a day. And so I said, I have a checklist that goes with that. If you want to go to this, then we have to revamp and have new checklists created, blessed by the corporate office, all these different things. And then we're using the labor, we're wearing our people out, who are really going to need it, that type of energy if we do get a confirmed case on site. And so we were able to kind of go back and forth, and she understood where we were coming from, and and then adopted our policies of how we're going to run things. So just make sure that you read through these questions, so that way you can see what healthcare services responses are, when it comes to these different things that will definitely come up at the facility level. All right, and there's print and sign there, but most of you guys had it on Learn-A-Pon. I would just make sure that you have the documentation in section 4. We also put it in Spanish because we do have down here a heavy Hispanic population. I know down in the Miami area, you know, we definitely have a lot down that way where we're going to need to make sure that we translate. So most of these documents, I'm trying to get them translated. This one came out soon afterwards, which was the infection control and patient resident rights. Just make sure that, you know, patient resident rights, I believe, was one of January's in services. So make sure that that's printed out. A lot of times when we're scrambling and, you know, trying to make sure that we're following what the facility is looking for, we just don't want to, you know, step over, you know, the residents and what it is that they're feeling. A lot of people have insecurities. Always communicate what you're doing when you're going inside the rooms, and how we're cleaning and why we're doing certain things, so that way, you know, everybody is aware and feeling more comfortable. They'll put more at ease. The pots and ware washing was added to the dining services at that time, so that's why that was in there. And then the COVID-19 restrictions. So this one is basically at the facility level what we're dealing with. So so section 2, before I jump into that, I wanted to open it up for my trainers first. If you guys have any questions about any of those memos that came out for back and forth with the facility, and you know, if anybody has any questions, or if Tim, if anything at the facility that you've been dealing with, you know, if there's anything that you want to add to it.
No, I mean, Mike, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I mean, exactly what Mike is preaching is exactly what we're doing here at the Southern Building in McClenny. Just reiterate and follow those processes to the T. Educate, demonstrate, and train everybody who is in the building and at the building at all times.
How many cases do you have right now
We're up to 8 cases right now.
in that facility?
Yep, out of 200. They tested every single employee, including ours, every staff member, every patient. I mean, and so we're just day by day, just making sure that our policies and procedures are implemented and consistently following up with that.
Awesome. I appreciate your hard work out there, man. All right. Anybody else have any questions or anything to add to section 1? Going once.
Good job, Mike.
Right, apparently. Going once, going twice. All right, so we're going to move into section 2. So section 2 is pretty much, like I said, all the government agency stuff. So I'm going to breeze through some of this to give you the highlights. If you're taking notes, I would take down page numbers, because that's really helpful, you know, so that way you kind of have an idea of where to go, because like I said, this document is huge, and we want to make sure that we break it up into digestible pieces. So I would tell you that I'm going to jump over here to page 20. So page 20 is the CMS response to COVID-19 and the direction to the regulatory agencies. So basically CMS communicating to the ACA surveyors on what to look for when they're going into the facilities and doing their audits and whatnot. Now, from what I've heard, they've suspended regular surveys, but some are still going in for infection control surveys and focus surveys. So actually, Jeannie was kind enough to put some of that in here. So we have page 29 is actually a cheat sheet. It says the focused survey for nursing homes. So when a surveyor, an ACA surveyor, walks into your facility, they have this, whether it's on their computer, laptop, or a paper copy, as they're going through the facility, they have this particular document with them. And this document is going to go over standard transmission-based precautions, what they're observing there, versus the general standard precautions, hand hygiene when they're observing the staff, personal protective equipment. So like this is legit what the surveyors are using. So if we have kind of answers to the test, we can use this and kind of do our own internal mock survey to make sure that we're firing off on all cylinders on everything that they would be asking for. On page 38, I'm not going to turn to that one. That one's for hospital and acute care. When you're, you know, when I get with the Georgia folks tomorrow, I'm going to have to go, you know, go through that a little bit deeper. But page 48, I'm going to jump over to that one. Let me get it to where you can actually read it. All right. So page 48 is focus surveys for nursing homes when it comes to infection control, which, like I said, they've suspended the regular surveys. So this would actually be the sheet that you're going to want to use for doing your internal checks to make sure that you're good to go. A lot of it is very similar, but they do throw in some infection control components here just to make sure that you know, we're again firing off on all cylinders. And then page 57, for those of you that have hospitals that are listening in on the call, that's where you're going to see that particular form. So I'm going to jump over to page 67. Get this right side up so you can see it. I'm usually turned around here. All right, so this was from the CDC, and this was the proper putting on and off the donning and doff of personal protective equipment, and it actually does have all of the pictures on here. It wouldn't be a bad idea to place in the facility, besides, you know, in the binder, so that way people can actually see it. Karen, you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea, at least in the areas where you may have active cases or any isolation, janitor's closets, at least for now.
Absolutely. So, and then page 71 was a kind of a continuing document from the CDC. This one is not so much strictly for us. This is actually CDC's recommendation for a preparedness checklist for nursing homes and long-term care facilities. And so if your facility is a little bit behind the gun, most of them should have this document. If they don't, you can definitely show it to them and see if they're got all this in place, because it actually talks about setting up, you know, a committee, you know, and all the different things that you should be doing at the facility level to make sure all these different folks should be in that committee, you know, and it has all the different, you know, checks and things that the CDC recommends for any of the long-term care facilities. So if your administrators are having meetings and they're just trying to figure it out and they don't have it, this is, you know, again, a government document that's Googleable, and it's a good checklist. So if you guys, it would create good partnership with the facility if they don't already have something in place or they're trying to figure out, you know, how to put it together. This is a great document to be able to share with the committee so that way they can check off that they've got all those things in place. So that's page 71. So there's a good chunk of, let's see here, page 83. Page 83 to 106 talks about optimizing the supply of different PPE and things that are needed. So this one's like respirators. If you go through, like I said, it goes all the way to page 106. It talks about optimizing, you know, strategic use of PPE, you know, certain things where, you know, if the PPE is compromised, I know we're trying to, you know, save masks and, you know, things of that nature. So we want to make sure that, you know, we are, you know, look on here as far as recommendations, different things that you guys are using. I know that there's been a shortage around the country. So some facilities they're stocked up, and then some facilities it's very scarce. So you will find face masks on here. You'll find eyewear on here, different ways. You know, here supply protection of eye protection, optimizing. So just make sure that you go through here if you guys are struggling at all with PPE, and you know what to save or how to save it, and you know all that good jazz.
You're gonna have to untrain after all this because of all the infection control.
Absolutely. We were not prepared with the PPE, but yes, definitely untraining will happen when we get back to our normal. So 107 is the EPA information. So this one is good when now we've been talking about that there's shortages when it comes to different chemicals that we're using. So this is list N from the EPA. So this is what we are using to make sure that we are in compliance with the CDC regulations. If you remember on the frequently asked questions, it talked about, you know, does the chemicals that we use kill coronavirus? You know, coronavirus, the COVID-19, you will not find a chemical that states a kill claim for actual COVID-19. So the sister viruses, the CDC basically is using that as their recommendations when they put together this list N that will go over all the different kill claims, the kill times, what companies that they're used for. So for those district managers that are on the call and you're looking for different options, you know, because you're starting to run out of certain things, make sure you always check it with list N to make sure that we're all good. And whenever in doubt, please reach out to myself or the PDMs or the corporate office to make sure that you know, before you purchase and waste money, that you know, you get something that's on the approved EPA list. So so that one is in section 2 here, from 107 to 128 basically is what that is. So I'm gonna
Hey,
open it
Mike,
up for
while I
questions.
got your training managers, actually, I'm asking this question to all you guys. Is dining reaching out to y'all for support, chemicals, whatnot, everything Mike's been going over? I'm just kind of curious for my own input if the dining managers are reaching out to y'all. Bueller?
Never did.
They never did?
No. The
Okay.
reason why, because there's no dining services. All of the food is being delivered directly to the restaurant rooms. And then I think they have their own policies and guidelines as to how they're going to clean up their respective kitchen areas, because they have all the signages right in the front of their door before you go ask for something.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that we're supporting them if we're doing dining services in those accounts, and if we're not, I mean, we offer a great partnership, but
Absolutely.
you know, to make sure that you know, they have the right chemicals and things like that. If we are dining services in the facility, like I said, we have to get their education and in service if they're not using their own binder. So find out from the dining services manager if they printed off the binder, if they know what's in it, and they're utilizing this properly or not. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other folks, some feedback on dining? Has anybody else reached out?
Mike, can you hear me?
Yes.
Is it good or is it okay to use Virex 256 in the kitchen area around food? Obviously not on food, but on the
right. Kyle, you want to take that?
Yeah, no, on the surfaces is completely fine.
Okay.
Just like that, we just have to make sure the dwell time and everything's sitting okay. But yeah, no, it has been approved to use in the kitchens, but that is a good question.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Moving right along. So section 3, I'm going to kind of breeze through this a little bit. The first one, because most of you have already taken the Learn Upon courses, so I'm not going to go ahead and read all through, but I'm going to touch any highlights. The infection control overview policy, that was that very long in-service that we had last month here. So usually this is the paper copy of it. We wanted to make sure we put that one in the binder. So make sure that you know, it goes over the airborne, the contact, the droplet, you know, routes of transmission, standard precaution again versus, you know, transmission-based precautions, hand hygiene, you know, all these different things, you know, for the infection control piece of it. We also have on 137 is the Spanish version, if any of you guys are needing that. Again, if you are working with your dining folks and they feel like they're not, you don't know if they're reaching out, again, same team, let's make sure we're communicating and they have all their in-services in there as well. So this is the dining service part where best practices for meal delivery. I heard Juvie, you mentioned, you know, them bringing them, you know, out to the room. So they should be following this in-service there. And then I think on page 151, shows for the registered dietitians as well. This was a new one that had come out, best practices for remote documentation by the registered dietitian. So Kyle, if you want to forward that on, I'm sure you probably already have, but any of, you know, to Michelle Gray to make sure her team has it, you know, down here.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for the training managers on the call, just from a dining perspective, I would encourage you, whether we do dining there or we don't, really watch the handling of the food, especially if you have cases in your building. And if you notice they're not using separate carts, even for delivery, they're supposed to be transferring to a different cart for nursing. Same thing when they bring it back. You know, so if you notice things going on like that, please don't be shy to bring that up. We're all in this together. So if you notice anything that, even if you don't know if it's right or wrong, reach out, and please let us know so we can help better educate everyone. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. So the one I wanted to put your attention to here was the interim recommendations for routine and terminal COVID-19 isolation room cleaning. So this one is when you actually have an active case in your facility and you're dealing with, cleaning the unit if it's multiple cases, or cleaning the room. So some of this in the very beginning is just CDC recommendations, and then here is our actual in-service portion. So 161, if you're taking notes, to make sure that we are cleaning it correctly. So the first part is going to talk about the EPA solutions and making sure that we have the proper stuff. We are, as a company, looking at the double bagging method when it comes to how we're dealing with certain things. Now, this question has come up at different locations because the facility might want to, put it in the biohazard bags, and, they have their own policies with it. And we're going to follow, as far as, our double bagging method, we would take it to the laundry, the heat from the water with the chemical mixture should be fine in order to have that kill time with what we need. But a lot of people are very nervous, and so we're not going to fight them when it comes to, hey, we want to remove this out of the facility. So just get with again, those committees that are working on the COVID-19 response to see what the facility is doing when it comes to when they discharge and what we're doing with the curtain and things like that. Again, our practices, our laundry operation does meet the regulations for CMS and CDC recommendations. But again, because this is new, this is something different. It's not dealing with the regular infection control issues that we have. With COVID, there's a lot of anxiety that comes along with it. So we don't want to fight with them over policies when we can just take it out of the facility if it's not going to cause the spread. Removal is not to not to have to go back and forth with. This one goes over the common areas in the isolation unit and what we're going to be doing there before entering the room. A lot of it is very similar to the isolation room practices, so you can kind of go through it. The one thing I really wanted to put your attention on that a lot of people don't realize, in this section B, before disinfecting, it says do not use spray bottles when cleaning those surfaces. And the reason being is spraying those surfaces can cause aerosols. And so this is spread through droplets. And so when it comes to that, we really have to take a look. And the CDC recommends at least 4 hours before you actually go into the room to terminally clean it, because we want to make sure that they've tested air quality, and as those droplets are settling, it seems at minimum 4 hours before you go into the room. We've had a facility where the administrator they discharged and they wanted us to go right into the room. And we're putting people in harm's way if we do that. And also we're going to sanitize and clean everything. And then all these different droplets can end up settling on those surfaces again. And then we're going to have another outbreak. So please, if you do have any of our clients, any of our administrators that are asking, anything other than waiting those 4 hours, to let us know, so that way, sometimes it's just education. That's what we're trying to do with you guys, is make sure that you're fully educated. So some of them might not be getting that training as the CDC is putting stuff out. So there are different in this binder on the government tab. You're going to have a little table there that shows the 4 hour wait time. So we can pass that along to our clients. So the rest of it is basically very similar to isolation room cleaning. So you can definitely take a look at that. Let's see here, what else we got here. Page 168, after this in-service is done. I'm working on getting that in Spanish, by the way, so that way we can roll that out. The high-touch disinfecting areas, this is going to go in that QCI section, which is section 5, so make sure that you have this. This is just a checklist that was approved by the corporate office, and it has all the high-touch points, and basically we treat it like our AM/PM tours, and then we have a midday section as well, where all these different areas are being done. My suggestion, is you guys have assigned housekeepers to different sections. If you're going to have them do handrails and, you know, this has grab bars in the bathrooms and things like that. There's been times when infection control, the manager is running around and hitting all the doorknobs and hitting all the high touch point areas. But to think that the manager is going to be able to do, you know, all the grab bars in the bathrooms and all these different areas and do it 3 times a day, that's all they're going to be doing. So we have to delegate some of this with the follow-up, no different than our QCIs, and then have them initial off in their section. So in this little, you know, box here, you can have multiple people's signatures that were on that day, you know, that are doing the AM or the midday or the PM. Or if you've assigned, you know, a certain person to do this, you know, 3 times a day, then have their signature on there. But just make sure it stays consistent, so that way, if you have, you know, multiple signatures on one and then you only have one signature on the next one, that could be problematic when this document is being scrutinized. So you have to figure out what how you're going to execute at the facility level, and then just stick to that process. Don't change it. Let's see here. What else we have here? And then the last one I wanted to touch on, laundry operation, is page 169. That's straight out of the operations manual. The corporate office did make a couple of adjustments from what the old ops manual had. So this is the most current. And so it basically kind of goes through our normal laundry processes since they did meet the standard. The only one that I want to bring you to is page 178. If you're taking notes, this is in the areas when we had COVID present. It's the disinfection of the clothes hangers, because that's something that can get overlooked when we do personal clothes, and making sure that those are getting disinfected. So we put that out for you guys there. And then after that, it's basically section 4, which is going to be all the training reports from Learn Upon and from iSIMS and any handwritten in services that you have. And then section 5, like I said, is a living, breathing section where every single day you should be putting in your QCIs for laundry. You should be putting your QCIs for housekeeping, your high touch point checklist. You know, anything that you guys are documenting on needs to be in this little section here, so that it shows our daily quality assurance. So that is the binder in itself. So I want to open it up to any questions on the binder, and then we'll jump back into Apollo, and then we'll close out. But any questions on the binder itself or any other stuff that we touched on?
Hey, Mike, it's Joe Hansen. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Good. I just want to clarify and make sure that everybody knows that with the Virex, with the 256, if they use it on food contact surfaces, it has to be washed afterwards.
Yes. Yes. Thank you
Okay.
for the clarification there. Appreciate that. Any other questions, comments, concerns on the binder?
I think, you know, if you're well informed and you're confident in what you're portraying out there to your staff, they're going to feel confident in what they're doing and less afraid. So I know we're just skimming some of the surface of these things today. Take some time, make sure you're educated. You never know when your first case is going to be already in the facility. So protect yourself and, you know, be the leaders that you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we'll avoid the freak out if we know what we have at our fingertips, and knowledge is power right now, knowing how to be able to deal with this, and then educating our staff. So I'm starting with you guys, you know, because again, a lot of the other account managers reach out to you guys for trivial stuff. Some of them don't even have the most current binder. They have the original binder that was only 60 pages, and now they're, you know, all the different things that have been added in. So for the district managers on this call, please make sure that you get them the updated version, and that they start using the binder, and then just you know, put in the in services, you know, as needed there. I'm going to jump back over into. Go ahead.
In the infectious control one that I had the quiz.
Yes.
When I did my in-service, I had them all do the quiz. Does that go in the binder as well? Just keep it in there?
Yeah, I would keep it in the section 4, where you're going to put all your Learn Upon and Apollo, the results, and like I said, any handwritten stuff. So all that stuff will be in the section 4 part of your binder. And reference that one memo that had all of our procedures on like the 5-7, the isolation room, the PPE, hand washing, all that kind of stuff. And all the education that we can put in there. I would probably just pull everything from January to now, because most of those in-services was on that list. So that's what I would pull, is everything from January to now, and just stick it in that list. And then as the corporate office is pushing out any new stuff in response to the COVID-19, I'll make sure that I reach out to each one of you to make sure that we got that in the binder.
And I think a lot of people are doing the paper in-services as well as the ones on Apollo.
Yeah.
So they're going ahead and having those signed as well.
Any documentation that you have on education, just stick it in that section 4, because sometimes the facility will do their own as well that we have to participate in, and we'll get a copy of it. And so that way we can we want this binder to be a one-stop shop for you as a resource. And also when, you're going to have government agencies come to your building when you do have a confirmed case. And so we've had several in Central Florida. I know Kip is on the call, and he had mentioned to me a little while back that CDC actually scrutinized the binder as well as ACA, and they didn't have any recommendations for us, and felt that we were pretty prepared with what it is that we're doing. So please know that everything in here is what they're looking for. So we want to make sure and not just that we have it on site and it's collecting dust on the shelf, but that we're actually using this binder to be able to, reference it. So understand what's in it. Okay. Let's see here.
Mike,
David,
it's Leonard Dion. Just wanted to really appreciate your presentation today. That was a pretty good overview of the COVID-19 binder and its contents. Well done.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
On a footnote, your governor did just issue a stay-at-home order for the state of Florida.
Awesome. It's about time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was during the call, Mike. I was going to text you. This is Kip.
Nice.
We did get a stay-at-home order. And just to reiterate that, I know, Mike, this has been great. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. But to touch on what he said about the binder, the 2 confirmed cases we've had in BB, we've had the binder in place. And again, the CDC did look at it with no recommendations. And this was early on in the binders, early version. Right now, this binder is it's amped
massive.
up on steroids. I mean, it's awesome. It's got everything we would ever need. So just know, I mean, we are, corporate, we're looking out for the best interest every day, in operations. I'm on the call with the divisional leadership, and Mike's on that call. We're always looking for the best recommendations, CDC, what they're saying. And so our goal is to make this accessible to you guys as possible. And I love that Mike's doing this. I mean, we're pushing it out daily with the DMs. But I appreciate this. You guys are leaders, Michelle and all you guys on the phone, I know that you guys get calls from the other managers. So,
absolutely.
So please, continue to be the leaders you are. Ask as many questions as you can. There's no dumb question. And Mike and Karen and everybody, thank you so much. And Kyle, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Now, I did get a question privately here from David Edwards. This is, how do we know when there's an update to the data on Apollo? Jeannie, every time that there's been some kind of an update, she has sent out a kind of a blast email to everybody and kind of BCC'd most of us. And then she tries to highlight it in red, if there's any change in the document. And then, so that's typically how it's been every time that she's made any updates. But if there's any changes, I'm usually aware of it, so I can also send out a blast or everybody that's on this call and make sure that everybody saw that. So, but yeah, Jeannie typically every time that she's been adding stuff to Apollo, that COVID-19 tile on Apollo, she's been sending it out.
Thanks.
No problem. All right.
Don't lie. You're OCD, Mike. You check that like every single day.
No,
you're OCD, bro.
Right.
If y'all have anything out there, recommendations that you find or someone's sending you, don't put them into practice without letting someone know first.
Amen.
Everything has to be approved through corporate before we're using anything different or putting anything new procedure-wise into practice.
That's Awesome. Thank you, Karen. Because people start creating stuff and going rogue. And guys, you know, this is serious. I mean, people, you know, people's lives are in our hands with what we're doing. So we want to make sure that you know, we don't put anybody at risk. So that's what that is. So I'm going to click on this COVID-19 tile one more time so that way I can show you a couple more things here before we get close it out. Now, hold on, somebody did chat me here. Angie, I have to speak with the administration. Just okay, that's fine, Angie. Okay, so let's go through this tile here. What I wanted to touch base on, because most of this stuff that you're seeing that I'm scrolling past is all in the binder. It's just the pieces of it if you needed to just print off certain things. COVID section 3, you know, 1, 2, and 3 is in there. So now this one is the employment and personnel, and this one is specific to Florida. Guys, the sworn statement for affirmation for provisional hiring. So I know that that has come up at different spots when the level 2 background screening places, the UPS stores are closed and we can't get that done. So the first part of it is we are supposed to attempt to get the level 2 done. So you guys will know, you know, your areas, you know, on which places are closed and which ones are not. I'm sure with the governor putting in that order, more and more places are going to close. So we have the opportunity to do some provisional hiring so that way we don't, you know, end up short staffed. And so with that, we need to make sure that they fill out this sworn statement, you know, or affirmation for making sure that they don't have any disqualifying offenses when they come on board. And we also have to do, for those of you that remember prior to electronic onboarding, we had the affidavit of compliance from ACA that lists the 4 pages worth of disqualifying offenses. We need to make sure that that gets signed as well. And then that gets, you know, shot up, and we're doing the normal, putting them through the electronic process. And then once corporate office receives both affirmations, then they will allow you to proceed to the next step 2, 3, and 4 on the hiring process. So that's where you're going to find that. The other thing is this temporary, you know, let's see here. This document here is for temporary hires. If you end up having to hire some folks PRN as a backup, because here's the deal is that, you know, there's a lot of you guys don't have active cases at your facility right now, but when you do, certain staff members, they're going to refuse to come to work, and that we're going to have to deal with on a disciplinary, because, you know, we take our job very seriously, taking care of these residents, if it's not for a medical condition or, you know, something of that nature. But hiring some folks PRN, I don't know why my computer's acting so slow, but probably because I got all you guys on here, but you can actually, this is like an offer letter for temporary PRN. So you can actually print that out and make sure that you hand that, so that way when you're fully staffed and some of those folks, we're not going to be able to retain them, they know that it was a temporary position. So the provisional hiring is right here. They took off Florida because we were waiting for basically the word from ACA that we got the approval. So this just needs to be updated because this was on 320. So they'll put Florida back in as far as how we do the provisional hiring. Testing positive at the facilities, that's going to be here. You know, basically what we're going to be dealing with. That's where the interim recommendations, most of the stuff was in the binder. The next one is for those of you that are working remote management. If you need to access any of those documents, they're there. These are state specific. Florida's not on there, so you can pass through there. Here's something I wanted to kind of look at and show you is we had Medline coronavirus info sheet here. So, because I know Medline is what we're using. So that's going to have all the information that we need for different things that Medline is offering for coronavirus. And you have your also Diversity chemicals here as well, with the Ecolab for laundry chemicals and all that good stuff. So very good information here on this tile. The next one I wanted to look at here, SDS sheets. As you guys are introducing new chemicals into your facility, please make sure that you update your SDS binders so that way we don't have any problems there. This one is for your food vendors, so your dining team. Again, if they haven't had the luxury of a call like this, that they know how to get on here and find some of this stuff here, and some Genesis specific stuff down there. So so guys, that's basically a nutshell on. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. A nutshell on you know, COVID-19. readiness on Apollo, what it is that we're doing. So now I kind of just wanted to open it up. You guys are welcome to unmute yourself and ask questions. If there's anything that we can do to help support you in the field, again, you guys are on the front line, so anything that we can do for you. So want to open it up for questions before we close it out?
I'd like
Mike,
to, so go ahead, Rose.
I have one question. In my building, they're requiring us to have a drug screen before they start. What's going to happen when they start closing everything down and we're not going to be able to do the drug screens? Can I still hire somebody?
You should be able to. We had that in some of the Genesis facilities, and then some of them are going to have to circle back, similar to the provisional hiring as these places are closing down. Now, some of them will do the drug test kits on site. And so, that if you're talking with your administrator and they want to keep that, policy in place, then just tell her to order some on-site testing kits, so that way she can prep for, locations that have closed. But if not, then they're going to have to do some kind of provisional hiring.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And Mike, can we hear from the manager that currently does have some COVID cases and kind of tell the rest of us how his day-to-day is going?
Sure. I know Tim has a ton of them. Anybody else?
Just so the rest of us kind of hear what it's like in your building, Tim, if you could.
All right, Tim, why don't you tell us from the time you got the phone call that you had an active case, man? Kind of give us a little snapshot, bro.
Yeah, so a week and a half ago, we got the first confirmed case on Friday night at like 9 p.m.
Okay.
And so really everything Mike has talked about is like what we're preaching daily. One, ensuring the safety of our employees, creating a positive environment and just really calming them down. But again, every room here in this building is being treated like an isolation room. So like we're doing 30-minute rounds, the account manager and I, just to ensure that we're following proper policies and procedures, really demonstrating the 5 and 7 step. I mean, physically demonstrating it. Hand washing. After you leave that room, you hand wash every single time. Proper PPE use. Again, we're observing and we're doing the competency verification sheet forms right in front of them to make sure that we're not missing anything at all. So again, proper PPE use of putting it on, taking it off, infection control, again, doing those 30-minute rounds. I mean, I probably walk 5 or 6 miles a day in this building, making sure that all necessary doors are closed. We're using the proper PPE in the soil room and then taking that off and using the proper PPE in the actual room where the washers are. So again, it's following up consistently and making sure that we are 100% confident in what we do here at this facility. Meetings daily, in the morning, just a quick touch, of like, hey, does anybody have any questions? Is there any concerns? I'm not going to lie, it's a little scary. I did my first room Sunday and, I said to myself a little prayer before I went in, but, we waited the time, that room was actually dormant for an entire few days. And so, we wore the proper PPE. And again, I express hitting those high touch areas. When you go in a patient's room, make sure, again, like Mike said, you have the Virex there. Don't spray it on the surface, spray it on the actual microfiber rag. And then use your bleach wipes for the high touch areas, the handrails, the light switches, the bed rails, the doorknobs, the bathroom doorknobs, things like that. So that way you can control this in every direction. So, I mean, it's extremely important that your team is confident in this. So that way, when everybody and their brother shows up, which we have had here, they even have the federal government coming in here too as well. It's an infection control team. And it's just making sure that these processes are in place so there's nothing untouched. And so, continuously every day,
Thank
So
you, Tim. I appreciate that, man, and I appreciate the hard work that you're doing out there, because like it is scary, but again, you're able to feel more confident that you can get it done if we're following those practices. My suggestion, since most of you don't have an active case in your facility yet, hopefully not, knock on wood, excuse me. What I would tell you is that if you have an infection control room, start using that, as practice, and make sure that all of your team members have an opportunity, to clean it, and you're observing them, and because practice is not going to make perfect, but it'll make permanent. They're going to have these habits. It's going to be like second nature, to get it all done. So I would definitely advise practicing. Have nursing staff watch you guys, so that way, because you guys are going to coordinate with one another, if you do have an active case, and how you're going to deal with it. So use those opportunities now to get your staff comfortable, so that way you don't have the freak out. And that's really the whole point of this, is just to get everybody up to speed, so that way we avoid the freak out, and we educate everybody, and then they can feel confident, like Tim is, going into those rooms every single day, and then being able to come home and know that he's not bringing some of that home to his family. So that's basically kind of what we wanted to touch on. I know everybody's busy. I tried to keep it up to an hour. If you guys have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to Karen, Kyle, or myself, and then we'll pretty much take it from there. So I appreciate you guys' attendance on the call, and anything that we can do to help you, we really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Great job.
Thanks, Mike. Good job, man.
See you guys.